Welcome to the Modern Medicine Movement Podcast. Super pumped, super grateful to be here with you guys. It's another beautiful day. I was going to say in Hawaii, but in the mountains of Utah at the moment. And actually, at the moment, I'm missing a little bit of a Hawaii because it's a little cool, a little rainy. But man, we need the rain over here. We had a kind of a mild winter, not a ton of snow, a couple 100 inches down from the previous year. So we need all the rain we can get. Maybe Hawaii will send us I guess in the winter it's called the Coconut Express, where we get all those storms and lots of moisture. And we missed that this year. We didn't get a lot of that. So we could use a little bit of that Coconut Express coming this way right now. Maybe this is the first of a little bit, because we definitely need it, and we are hoping to get more so we don't have any drought over here. But still looking beautiful out there in the mountains. Just did a beautiful hike with my boys, and it was amazing. We climbed a mountain literally in the backyard here that's about 10,500 feet or so. It's about a 1,800 foot climb from our house, and we got our three favorite vitamins M, N, and O. Well, M, N, and D. Vitamin M for movement, N for nature, and D, of course, that important vitamin we get from the sunshine. So I'm pretty pumped. I'm grateful to come and share a few ideas with you today. And in fact, the last show that I recorded that you guys will get soon is the podcast on the benefits of having both my favorite vitamin, vitamin D, once again, with my other favorite mineral, magnesium, because you actually can't get the full benefit out of vitamin D, especially if you're taking it in an oral form, either in your food or in your supplements, unless you have adequate, that's right, magnesium, that mighty mineral magnesium. So hopefully you got to listen to the last show talking about that. It was a lot of fun to record it, kind of give some updates on my favorite mineral, magnesium, and all its utility in the body. And while I was researching that, I actually got basically reminded of another mineral that is super important in the body, super, super essential, meaning we can't make it on our own. We actually have to take it in, hopefully in our diet, right? Food first, that's always my mantra. And if we can't get enough, we may need to supplement, and we will talk about that real soon. But before we get into it, I wanted to share one of your reviews that I just got a couple days ago, and it's from entitled North America 2012 with the 5 stars at the top. Thank you so much. It says, quote, Dr. Hemingway's podcast is educational, easy to understand, and super useful. I've just started listening recently, and one episode has already transformed the quality of my sleep by adding magnesium. This podcast series empowers the listener to make smart choices about health with alternative and holistic viewpoints. I can't wait to listen to the rest of the series. Well, awesome. North America 2012, you can easily do this. We've got, I think, about 60 shows so far, so that's about 60 hours of content. You could easily bang that out in a month, a couple hours a day, right? Take a couple of long walks each day, or if you got to commute to work or whatever. And I try to bring you guys a show pretty much every week. Sometimes if I'm out traveling, like I was to Costa Rica recently, I missed a couple of weeks, but I'm so grateful to be back and sharing with you guys again. So thank you, North America 2012. And if there's any other folks that have not yet, I know there's a few of you, written a review, please do so. I love reading your reviews. I read 100% of them, and they're super easy to do, and they help so much. Get the good word out, get the show more visible, especially on Apple Podcasts, where the majority of users get their podcast. But you can review it anywhere you get your podcast, and I would super appreciate it. And I'm actually doing a little challenge right now, in case you haven't heard. If you guys can get a review out on Apple Podcasts, I'm actually going to be picking one of those upcoming reviews for a free course, my free course, which is $197 right now, which is super worth that, oh my gosh, super low price, because it will change your life, your health, your wellness, and maybe even your waistline if you so desire. It's a natural course on natural health, natural weight loss. It's available for just a small price of $197. And I'm going to give away one course for free, just for you guys, the listeners who write a review. So I'm going to be drawing out of a hat all you guys who throw in your reviews in the next couple of weeks. And I need to get at least 20 new reviews to give away one of these courses, because that course took me actually a couple of years to make. But it's got amazing content, and I've gotten lots of awesome feedback so far. A couple of my friends that are taking the course, one has already lost about 10 pounds in just 2 weeks. So I'm super pumped for him, and a few others that have written me lots of positive feedback. So if you haven't gotten the course already, please jump over there to mastermind.com. You can just look up my name, Hemingway. You can easily find it, or it's called Natural Weight Loss. And it's out there and it's available. It's got a cool PDF to come with it that's got, simple tricks and tips and helpful ways to set goals to maximize the utility of this cool course. So hope you'll check it out. Hope you'll grab it, and please give me some feedback on it. I'd love to hear about all your successes. Anyway, well, without further ado, we're going to jump on over to the podcast title and I guess topic of the day, which, like I said, was another one of those important minerals. In fact, it's essential. It's essential because we can't get it from our bodies. We can't make it. We can't manufacture it. We must get it from our food or our diet or supplements that we take, because we cannot make it. And it is essential. And this is none other but the mighty zinc. Zinc is an essential mineral. It is so important. I'm going to articulate and share so many of the beautiful positive benefits we can get from it, and all that you need to know to be able to maximize, optimize, and make sure you have adequate zinc in your diet and you're getting your function supported, because it is so important. Oh my gosh. And I think just scratching the surface is the immune benefits. I think recently, especially during the corona virus pandemic, many of us have been hearing about the important benefits of our friends, none other than vitamin D, right? Vitamin C, and especially zinc, which is super helpful for improving our immune function. I think many of you probably take a little zinc when you get ill, either in the lozenge that you suck on, or in the gum, that zinc gum that's out there, or other supplemental form to get your zinc up during an illness. And that's been shown if you review all the data together in a giant meta-analysis, which takes all the available studies and looks at sort of the common themes and what's the outcome of all these studies. And yes, it does show that zinc can decrease the length of these viral illnesses, like the common cold, for example, caused by that nasty rhinovirus, by 30 to 40%. So let's just put that in English. Say the common cold lasts about a week. Well, let's just say 6 days for simple math, right? Well, the studies show that you can decrease the length by 30 to 40%. So in other words, instead of your cold lasting 6 days, it'll only last about 2.5 days, which I think that's pretty amazing. Actually, it would last 2.5 days less. So it would last about 3 to 4 days rather than 6 days. I misspoke. Sorry. But it's such an important benefit, because if you take some of the medication out there, like many of us are familiar with Tamiflu, it takes basically 1 day off out of about a 10-day illness. So that's about a 10% reduction in the length of the illness. Whereas zinc, this simple essential mineral, can cut the illness by 30 to 40%, which is way better than Tamiflu. And it's a non-pharmaceutical, and you can get it naturally. Like, how cool is that? I think it's stinking awesome. But that's literally the tip of the iceberg, as far as zinc concerns. But I think that's what most of us have heard of with respect to zinc. But I'm going to hopefully elucidate or share with you, bring to light some other super important functions, and it's going to make you love zinc even more than ever before. And let's just start with a little bit of fun history, fun facts, right? Zinc has been around, basically since the beginning, right? It's one of the essential minerals. It's on the periodic table. It's an element. It's found in nature. It's been used for millennia. In fact, I think the first civilizations that were really using it in their work, if you will, in their architecture, manufacture, building, construction, what have you, were probably the Romans. I think they're given credit to it because they used it to, you guessed it, help make, special iron, basically alloys that were coated with zinc so that the zinc would help the iron not rust. Because we all know that iron, or the most common, mineral element that we use for metals, in construction and things like that, it has this annoying problem that it rusts out, right? I know this too much and too familiar with this, with living primarily in Hawaii, and then secondly, in a snowy place in the mountains of Utah where they throw salt on the road and it makes my cars rust out, as well as, being rusted out in Hawaii from the, moisture and the salt from the sea and all of that. And basically, since the Romans, they've been coating iron with zinc. You've heard of zinc-plated construction materials, for example, zinc-plated screws and nails and things like that. And the reason they do that is because then the zinc will oxidize, because it actually oxidizes easier than the iron, which then will protect the iron from oxidizing or rusting. So zinc-plated materials have been used for millennia, at least since the Romans, as we know. And it's also in alloys, like you guys have probably heard of brass, which is copper and zinc together. And similarly, it keeps the copper from oxidizing. You guys see copper being used in buildings and things like that. Well, if you plate it with zinc, it'll last longer and it won't have that tarnish, which, makes that sort of greenish color or whatever. So zinc's pretty cool out in the construction industry, but even more importantly, it's super awesome and helpful in our bodies, not only for the immune function that I talked about, but literally for the production of everything in our bodies, from DNA to messenger RNA to the production and growth of cells, all kinds of enzymatic reactions, protein synthesis, development and growth, and wound healing actually is super important to have appropriate levels of zinc. And I think it was first described as a true deficiency, I believe it was around the 1950s, and that was noted in several populations. I think one was in the Middle East, and then they also found other locations, Egypt and a few others, where they had groups of people who were short in stature, kind of stunted in growth, and they suffered from other slow developmental areas like hypogonadism, for example, which is, the slowing of the development of their secondary sex characteristics, because zinc is important to that. And I'm gonna throw out some kind of fun facts later in the podcast too of how zinc can help the dudes, with erectile dysfunction, as well as with testosterone levels. It's been shown to be helpful. So dudes that are listening, or ladies that have dudes, listen all the way to the end, because I'm gonna share some data and some science on that and how that's helpful. But the original documentation of zinc deficiency was from that exactly, from groups of people that were much shorter than normal and that they had this hypogonadism, and they found it to be a zinc deficiency. And what's interesting is once they replaced that, this was in the early 1950s, like I said, they showed these folks to grow significantly. In the first year after zinc replacement, I think they grew on average about 6 inches, which is pretty amazing. And then their hypogonadism, their lack of secondary sex characteristics, that also resolved as well within the first year of zinc supplementation. So it was awesome how quickly these symptoms resolved, and it was found to be pretty evident in not only these couple groups, but the WHO has actually classified zinc deficiency as a worldwide health, you call it a pandemic or problem, because it affects at least 2 billion people worldwide. So that's a lot. That's a lot of people. And super important because it's second only to iron in the most common of the essential trace mineral deficiencies. So iron deficiency is more common, but then a close second place is zinc deficiency. So super, super important to know about zinc deficiency. You may have it and you may never know about it because maybe you just haven't checked. Most doctors don't check for this, but there's some fairly common characteristics that can be noted for deficiencies. Hair loss is one, changes in skin, especially delayed wound healing, for example. Immune function that's not up to par, right, can be shown to be problematic if you have a deficiency. Also, you may have chronic GI issues like diarrhea, for example. Macular degeneration may be caused by zinc deficiency. So there's definitely a lot of issues out there that can be related to zinc deficiency. As I mentioned, the populations where it was originally discovered was due to their short stature. They were stunted in their growth and development, as well as the hypogonadism. That's how they found them to be zinc deficient. But it's one of those essential minerals in the body that literally is involved in hundreds of reactions. Kind of like magnesium, if you guys remember the magnesium podcast, it acts as a cofactor to many different enzymes, kind of a catalyst, if you will, to lots of different enzymatic processes, everything from cellular growth, reproduction, gene expression, immune function, all kinds of enzymatic reactions in the body. So literally hundreds of different reactions require zinc as a cofactor. So we got to have it. It's so important. A couple of enzymes you guys have probably heard about are superoxide dismutase, which is this important one to have functioning properly because it helps clear our bodies of all that oxidative damage and inflammation, those free radicals that occur in inflammatory processes, which I've talked about ad nauseum in previous podcasts on inflammation. Zinc is important to act there in those reactions with this enzyme, superoxide dismutase, to help control inflammation. So zinc will have helpful anti-inflammatory, helpful benefits in an antioxidant sort of way because it acts as a cofactor with this important, crucial enzyme called superoxide dismutase. Also, another one you guys may have heard of is nitric oxide synthase, NOS. Nitric oxide is so important for the dilation of blood vessels to keep our heart healthy. And the dudes out there will know that this is an important enzyme responsible for not having issues with ED, right? Because this enzyme not only improves circulation to the heart and the cardiac blood vessels, nitric oxide, but also with the blood vessels that go down under to the other places that guys that don't have adequate zinc can suffer from ED or erectile dysfunction. So that's a couple of the vital roles in the body. It's probably the second most abundant of these trace minerals, like I was talking about earlier, iron being the most abundant, and zinc is a close second. It's found literally in every single cell in the whole body, and that's because of its important function to all these enzymatic processes in the body. So super important and second only to iron in its presence as a trace mineral in the body. I think most sources would quote around 2 to 4 grams. Most people being closer to about 2 grams of zinc in the entire body, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's, like I said, a close second behind iron, which only has about 4 grams in the body in total, which is much less than some of these other things. Like magnesium is a much bigger total body storage, as well as calcium and some of the others. But of the trace minerals, iron being the number one most common, and zinc being a close second, it is literally in every single cell and important to so many enzymatic, at least 300 reactions that have been described thus far. So super similar to magnesium in its use throughout the body in so many reactions. It's vital also, I think I kind of alluded to it, but in skin health, it helps us to have not only healthy skin, but helps us repair. If we get a wound, it's super helpful for wound healing. And so it's been shown in folks that have chronic wounds or ulcers that are not healing well, zinc is super helpful both to be applied topically as well as orally in supplement form so that they can heal better. Super helpful there. And as I mentioned, with kids that are not growing well, that are below stature for their age, there could be a problem with a zinc deficiency. And so there's studies showing that giving supplemental zinc to children that have deficiency and that are shorter in stature, this can easily improve that. Another kind of fun fact about zinc is that it helps with both taste and smell, and it's essential for those processes. And so I know recently a lot of us in the last 18 months, including myself, have had coronavirus or COVID, and we may be suffering from a little bit of lack of taste and smell and things because that was one of the common problems with that virus that some of us have experienced. And zinc may actually help benefit us to regain some of that. There's been some studies looking at that. So zinc's pretty cool. It's super useful. It's fascinating actually because it's used in so many reactions throughout the body. Like I mentioned, just two of the enzymes that you guys may have been familiar with, the superoxide dismutase and nitric oxide synthase, both use zinc as a cofactor. But there's a couple of articles I'll put in the show notes. I don't want to bore you with all the details, but they really go into the nitty-gritty about zinc and its importance for human health and how it's involved in all these different reactions, everything from the skin to the GI tract to the central nervous system, our brain health, of course, our immune health, skeletal health, our reproductive systems, so many things. And there's just a ton there. But I'll give you guys the highlights today because I just think it's so cool to talk about this essential mineral because we literally could not survive without it. It's that important. It is that important. Kind of like magnesium. We need it. We absolutely need it. And the first and foremost, I'll just reiterate its significant benefits in immune health. And the reason for that is because it helps activate these T cells. If you guys remember, we got things called helper T cells, we got killer T cells, and they are important in our immune function, our body's ability to fight infection. And that's why, for example, HIV, before we had good treatment, was so devastating because they had significant issues and problems with their T cells. And now that we have good medication for it, we don't see this as often, but the reason they died young of infections and quickly due to overwhelming infections was because their T cells didn't work well. And zinc actually significantly helps the T cells. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important for immune function, this mighty mineral, zinc, if you will. And so supplements have been shown to help, especially during the acute phase of an illness. A lot of people will take extra zinc, when they get a viral infection, especially. It's been well studied in the common cold, as I mentioned, 30 to 40% reduction in your length of illness, which is pretty awesome. And these are higher doses than you would normally take. Typically, the one used in studies was a dose of around 80 to 90 milligrams per day, whereas the common dose that we would just need normally if we have no deficiency would only be about, say, 14 milligrams a day or something, or 12 for a woman, depending on where you're from in the world and things like that. So a pretty low dose is what you need daily, but you actually do need some each and every day because we don't manufacture it and we don't really store it effectively in the body. So literally this is something we need each and every day. And I'll talk about later the food sources because I love to live by that mantra, food first, where we can get it firstly from the food. And then if we still need a little extra, we can certainly supplement. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But just to kind of clarify, the doses used during acute illness are much higher than the typical doses that you would use. That would be much lower. They'd probably be between 20 and 40 milligrams per day if you have a deficiency, and then just around 15 to 20 milligrams a day if you're pretty close to normal level there. And then if you're fighting a cold or what have you, you're going to up the dose to about 80 to 90 milligrams a day. So it definitely depends on what you're talking about as far as replacing it. Just because you're low or because you're trying to fight an acute infection, or if you just want to have a maintenance amount that's sufficient, it'll depend on the dose that you'll take. But the other thing about it, it's been shown, as I mentioned, basically across all populations to fight infection, especially the common cold. It's been studied a lot, but also it's been shown to help prevent infections. If you have adequate zinc, you're going to be less likely to have issues with skin infections and skin healing issues. I mentioned that it's been studied in people that have chronic ulcers. And they have trouble if they have a low zinc because they, you may not know this, but collagen actually requires zinc in part of its synthesis. So the making of collagen, and we've talked all about this in a previous podcast, how it's cross-linked, it's part of the skin, and it's a protective barrier for us. It's super important for general health and warding off infections and things, as well as the structure of our body. That collagen synthesis actually relies upon zinc. So you could take all the collagen in the world, and if your zinc is low, you're not going to be able to use it very well. So you might consider that as well when you're taking a collagen supplement. Make sure you have adequate zinc, because it's essential for that process of making collagen in your body. Because even though you take it, your body breaks that down through the digestive processes into its amino acids, and then it's got to rebuild it back into the collagen form. And to do that, it actually needs zinc. So you got to have it. You need it. In fact, what's interesting is the skin holds about 5% or so, 5 to 7% of your total body amount of zinc is actually found in the skin. That's a relatively high amount. Predominantly, it's found in the muscles and the bones and the prostate and dudes, and like I said, the skin as well, and the liver as well, because the liver uses zinc as a cofactor in so many enzymatic processes. And just kind of a fun fact that I'm sure you guys know about, if any of you have a glass of wine from time to time or have a little drink, that alcohol dehydrogenase that is used to break down the alcohol is actually dependent, once again, on zinc. So you want to make sure you have a healthy amount of zinc available for that if you like to have a drink every now and again, and that would be predominantly in the liver. So zinc is found in liver, and so guys and gals that like to eat meat, especially organ meats, you're going to be able to get zinc that way if you eat liver. It's also pretty high in the kidney. So if you eat organ meats from liver or kidney, or take desiccated organs in a capsule form, that's one way to get your zinc. Lots of other foods that have zinc, as well as both in animal and plant form. We'll talk about that real soon too. Although the plant form, I'll just kind of give you a little prelude, is a little bit harder to absorb. And that's because most plants have some version of phytates in them. And phytates, which are found in most plant foods, will actually block the absorption of zinc. And so you have to take higher amounts if you're getting all your zinc from a plant-based source, because the phytates within those plants will actually act as sort of a natural blocker or inhibitor to the uptake and absorption of zinc. So it's more common to find zinc deficiencies amongst vegans and vegetarians for that reason, because the phytates has that sort of inhibitory, or it blocks the absorption of zinc. So you got to be aware of that. So I would especially recommend you get your levels checked if you have a vegan or vegetarian diet, just because it's more common. You can still get adequate zinc from a vegetarian diet. You just got to try a little bit harder. We'll talk a little bit more about that. One of the cool things I appreciated when I learned more about zinc, and when I refreshed my mind, because I hadn't thought about zinc too much lately, but its role in brain health. And it's so important in the brain and your cognitive acuity, or your ability to think quickly and be able to have quick responses to many different types of tasks. The mental performance aspect is certainly optimized by having appropriate levels of zinc. And also, with respect to that, the eyes have a key requirement for zinc in order to hopefully avoid conditions like macular degeneration. But also beyond macular degeneration, if you just think back to what are the vitamins that help the eye so much, well, vitamin A always comes to mind, the retinol. And to be able to activate vitamin A so that it's useful in our body, we actually need zinc once again as a cofactor. So not only will it help with our vision now to have appropriate levels of zinc, but also later it'll help prevent macular degeneration, which is the most common cause of blindness in the world, age-related macular degeneration, and zinc can be helpful to be able to hopefully prevent that. So another shout out to its benefits in so many things, including brain health, eye health, the vitamin A, as I mentioned. Skin conditions I should have mentioned, in addition to helping with skin and wound healing and maintaining the integrity of the skin with collagen, which requires zinc. Also, acne can be improved by zinc. So if you're suffering from that, it's actually been shown to be benefited both orally and topically. You can apply zinc right to the acne itself, and it has been shown to improve that both topically and orally, and been shown that those that have zinc deficiency have a much higher incidence of acne. So big surprise. So you got to be, for your skin health, you got to be making sure you get appropriate zinc. And I alluded to another benefit which is so important, is sort of this anti-inflammatory, antioxidant benefit when I talked about the enzyme, the superoxide dismutase, and that will help because it requires that zinc cofactor. It'll help with decreasing inflammation and decreasing that oxidative stress. And it's been shown to basically decrease, if you have, appropriate zinc levels, it's been shown to decrease, chronic illnesses such as heart disease, cancer, a lot of the sort of decline in mentation that happens with things like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, etc., may have both inflammation at their root and may have some level of zinc deficiency as well. And inflammation, as mentioned, can be decreased through appropriate zinc levels because your superoxide dismutase will work better to decrease that inflammation. So zinc is super important also here as its anti-inflammatory, sort of antioxidant benefits, both in the heart, in the immune system, in the decrease of these nasty free radicals which cause inflammation. It'll also speed up wound healing, as we talked about. And, it's just one of these things that because it's used in so many hundred chemical reactions in the body, it's super important. And the good news is, severe forms, like I mentioned at the outset, that were initially described in the 1950s are pretty uncommon, where people are a lot shorter in stature or have this issue with hypogonadism. That's actually pretty uncommon, thank goodness. But more mild forms of zinc deficiency are actually pretty darn common, as the WHO has reported that over 2 billion people worldwide have this, and that may be a reason for, some of these higher rates of, immune problems, as well as higher rates of inflammatory disorders, chronic illnesses. Also, zinc will help with increasing the insulin sensitivity, which of course conversely decreases that nasty problem that 88% of us have. It will help decrease insulin resistance. So zinc is super important. There's a pretty convoluted physiologic mechanism, and has to do with how zinc sort of cross-links with insulin when it's released, and you need zinc activated to be able to improve your insulin sensitivity. And I could get into the physiology and chemistry, but it's a little bit daunting, so I won't. But I'll just say in short that it's helpful to decrease insulin resistance. And like I said, over 2 billion people worldwide are deficient in zinc, and it's both through decreased dietary intake as well as decreased absorption. If you think about all the people who suffer from GI illnesses, any type of chronic inflammatory illness like Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, these inflammatory bowel disorders, even things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or SIBO, or even what many of you have heard of that is so common is dysbiosis, or leaky gut, so to speak. You have issues with absorbing nutrients, and zinc would be one of these nutrients that you may have a deficiency in absorption. So though you may take in appropriate amounts in your diet, you just may not be able to absorb it effectively. And so getting your gut healthy will help with your absorption of zinc and other important minerals that you need for your body's enhanced activities and overall health, So those are folks, certain populations that'll show a more common decrease in zinc or hypo, a low level of zinc in their bodies because they're not absorbing it well. So if you have any intestinal issue, gut health issue, you may definitely want to get your zinc level checked. And that can be done in a blood test. It's from the plasma, or it can be done in a hair test. Those are a little bit harder to do and to get that information. But the blood test is actually not hard to do. It's just from the plasma, from the blood. And that's an initial sort of check that you could get your doctor to just add to the routine labs that you're getting. But it's a big deal. Like I said, over 2 billion people worldwide have it. And it's unfortunate because as we mentioned at the outset, zinc deficiency can cause problems not only with growth and development, but also with immune function. And it's been estimated that, 500,000 children a year die because of zinc deficiency as it relates to poor immune function. And that's something that just shouldn't have to happen. I mean, that's preventable. And so I really think getting the message out of the commonality of this zinc deficiency and then checking for it and making sure we have adequate zinc in our diet, that we aren't losing it because we can't absorb it, even though we may be eating it. If we have any digestive issues, we need to get our gut healthy. If you want to learn all about the gut and gut health, I did at least 2 podcasts on that early in the series. Go back and re-listen to those, because the health of your gut is going to easily contribute significantly to your ability to absorb zinc. And if you have one of these issues, please get your zinc levels checked. Also, if you're vegetarian or vegan, please check your levels, because it's so much harder to get adequate zinc because you're fighting with the phytates, so to speak, that come in most of the plant material that has zinc in it, which are like the legumes, for example, the beans. And so it just makes it harder to get those levels in the body. It's a little bit easier to absorb them if they come from an animal source, things like eggs and meat, especially those organ meats, as I mentioned. But in fact, probably the highest content of zinc would be shellfish. If you guys like oysters, for example, crab, mussels, lobster, clams, these sort of shellfish are loaded with zinc. Meat, as I mentioned, beef in particular, pork and lamb, bison also, poultry, which would be like the chicken and the turkey. Please make sure you're getting it well sourced. Fish like sardines, anchovies, salmon, they all have good amounts of zinc as well. For vegetarians and vegans out there, the legumes are the popular source there, which would be like the chickpeas, the lentils, the beans, black beans, kidney beans, etc. These are all in my chili that I make. I have kidney beans, black beans, pinto beans. I haven't added chickpeas to my chili, but maybe I'll try it. These are all good sources of zinc. Nuts and seeds, also pumpkin seeds, cashews, hemp seeds. These will all have some zinc. And then again, dairy products like milk and cheese and yogurt. Eggs, I think I already mentioned that. Some of the grains like quinoa will also have some zinc, oats as well. And then other vegetables like mushrooms and kale and peas, asparagus, beets, etc. will have some zinc. But just keep in mind, as I said, that if it's coming from a plant form, you're going to need a lot more of it, because the phytates in those same plant compounds are going to block absorption. And so you definitely want to take a look at that if you're a vegan or vegetarian. Get your level checked, just making sure. And that way you can benefit from having optimized zinc levels with your immune function, your skin health, your brain health, the anti-inflammatory benefits. There's so many awesome benefits of zinc. And it's pretty uncommon to get overdose, although if you took the 100 plus milligrams a day like you might during the common cold, and you just took that forever, then you might get a zinc overdose, because that's just too much. You don't need that much. And symptoms of overdose would be nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, diarrhea, abdominal cramps, headaches, decreased HDL levels. But as I said, this is pretty rare. More commonly would be to have zinc deficiency, which is often described as getting frequent infections, skin healing problems, hair loss, hair thinning, skin thinning, acne, rosacea. All these things may be having zinc deficiency as well. And so zinc, as I said, the recommended daily allowance is not that high. It's only about 12 to 14 milligrams. For adults in breastfeeding women, they should get a little bit more, because it's super important to have appropriate zinc levels in the babies who are being formed in utero or who are breastfeeding, because you don't want them to have issues with their brain function or their growth and development, which can easily be problematic if they have low levels of zinc. Remember that couple groups of population I described back in the 1950s that had their growth significantly stunted and so on. That was because of zinc deficiency. So just make sure you have appropriate levels of zinc in your diet. Number one, because food first. That's how I always recommend getting your zinc, from meats primarily. It's easy to get, and then all the plants that I mentioned. which definitely have it as well. The Legumes, for example. And, just keep in mind that if you need to supplement, that's fine too, but don't overdo it. Don't take the 100 milligram levels that you might during a common cold. I would probably keep it to about 20 to 40 milligrams tops if you're just supplementing with zinc. And that's the elemental zinc. So when you look at the label, it's going to tell you how many milligrams of whatever it is. There's 4 common forms of zinc that are available. And you just look at there's 2 numbers listed. One will be, for example, like zinc oxide, and then it'll say one number, say 100 milligrams, and then it'll say elemental zinc, 20 milligrams. The one that you pay attention to here is the elemental zinc, because that's the one that is available to the body, the elemental zinc. So that's how you do the calculation. And like I said, the upper limit of normal to be adding in supplement form, I would try not to go above 40 milligrams a day. But if you're fighting a cold or a virus or one of these nasty respiratory infections, you can certainly up that to about 90 milligrams a day for the duration of that cold, which hopefully will be less than 5 to 7 days. And with the zinc, it should be, a full 2 days shorter, which is double the benefit from Tamiflu, which I think is pretty awesome. So that's all I wanted to share for now, because I think that's enough. But just remember that you'll never know unless you check. So get your zinc levels checked. Get those numbers available to you from either a blood test or a hair sample. Most commonly a blood plasma test, because that's going to be much easier to do. And get those levels checked, and take some supplements if you need to. But try to get it from food. Food first. Shellfish, meat, legumes, all these things are awesome. And if you have any further questions, you can reach out to me at modernmedicinemovementpodcast@gmail.com. Please share this with anybody that you think might benefit, because zinc deficiency, as I mentioned, is actually much more common than you think. Second only in the trace mineral deficiency to iron deficiency, which is probably the most common worldwide. And it's so important to those cells. Every cell in your body needs zinc, and they need it all the time. And since we can't store it, let's try to eat it. Food first. Try to get it from our diets. And if we can't, try to get a good high quality supplement that has some in it. Anyway, that's it for now. Have a great day. Big aloha. Feel free to share. And I can't wait to see you again real soon. A big aloha.